The vice president gave us a very specific example on Friday of an idea being kicked around by the task force he's leading that's trying to reduce gun violence. And it sounds very similar to something from the James Bond movie Skyfall.
There's a lot could change if, for example, every gun purchased could only be fired by the person who purchased it, because literally would be unable to be fired. That technology exists, but it's extremely expensive.
But ideas like that don't sit well with the National Rifle Association, who emerged from a meeting with the vice president this week under the impression that the administration is seeking to attack the Second Amendment.
Gun control has been a failed experiment. Joe Biden pushed a gun ban through in 1994, and Bill Clinton's Justice Department said it had no impact on crime. So let's look at mental health. Let's look at a violent culture. Let's look at things that can really address the underlying problem.
Retailers across the country have seen a surge in sales lately as many Americans are stocking up on weapons they apparently fear won't be easy to come by once the federal government takes steps to reduce gun violence.
Gun sales have gone through the roof. Anything and everything. Rifles, handguns. I think people that were on the fence about buying, had planned to buy one, were pushed a little harder now because they're afraid that they're not going to be able to buy certain weapons.
Vice President Biden said this week he thinks a great deal can be done without impinging on the rights guaranteed by the Second Amendment. Greg?
Peter Ducey in Washington. Peter, thank you. Well, Vice President Joe Biden offered to speak with families of the victims of the Sandy Hook elementary shooting. That, according to the group Sandy Hook Promise, it emailed members offering to put relatives in touch directly with the vice president. The White House told families they will have an opportunity to share their views before President Obama makes any decisions on gun laws. Jamie?
Well, President Obama is now under increasing pressure from his own party, some of them at least, to avoid default without congressional approval. Senate Democrats are encouraging the president to consider bypassing Congress altogether if necessary to prevent our nation from defaulting on its spending obligations. Well, this would happen if lawmakers, sorry, I'm fighting back a cough right now, cannot agree to raise the nation's $16.4 trillion debt ceiling next month. And joining us now, David Hawkings, editor of the CQ Roll Call Daily Briefing, and it's great to see you, David.
Nice to be with you, Jamie.
Thank you so much for joining us. What does the letter from the Majority Leader, Harry Reid, say the president should do, and how many senators signed on?
Most of the Senate leadership signed on, and it encourages all the important top Senate leaders, including Senator Reid, Chuck Schumer of New York, and Dick Durbin of Illinois, and they all told the president to use, quote, any lawful steps, end quote, to make sure that that there's no default and that the debt limit goes up, even if Congress doesn't pass a law saying it could go up. The reason they're doing that is because the president has been told by Speaker Boehner he won't allow the debt ceiling to go up. He won't allow the House to vote on that unless there's a dollar-for-dollar trade-off of spending cuts to additional borrowing authority.
Right. This last deal, the fiscal cliff deal that went through without the spending cuts that Republicans wanted. But the president does have some authority, doesn't he, to take care of the debt limit question on his own? Is there a compromise between that and getting bipartisan support for an agreement?
Well, right. So any lawful steps, that's the big mystery, is what are the lawful steps? There are two steps that people are talking about down here in Washington. One that is seemingly quite legal, but sort of wacky sounding, and one that is questionably legal, but at least mainstream. The wacky but legal one would be actually minting a $1 trillion coin, or a coin of any denomination. It's totally legal that the president has the authority to make coins out of platinum in whatever denomination that he wants. In theory, he could have one coin worth $1 trillion minted, deposited at the Federal Reserve, and they could pay down the government's debts on that for several months.
Who pays
the notion
for that?
of doing that is, who would pay for that? Well, you just need enough platinum to make a coin, and you declare that its value is worth $1 trillion, and it's legal, and the federal government could start writing checks against that one coin if it were on deposit.
I know it
sounds pretty strange, but it is legal. The more mainstream one is of questionable legality. The president himself has suggested he doesn't think he has the legality to do this, which is to declare that under the Constitution, wording in the 14th Amendment says that the validity of the debts of the United States shall not be questioned. Some constitutional scholars believe that the president can just say on his own authority, we're going to keep paying our bills whether Congress has given us permission or not. The president in the past has said he doesn't think he has that power. Some Democrats think that he does.
So, you know, let me just take it a step further if I can, because you've laid out a great analysis of what the options are. There's a lot of talk by the administration that what they talk about with taking care of the debt ceiling and raising it is obligations by Congress, in particular, according to President Obama, that have been incurred so far. Is anyone considering the spending going forward, and how would we take care of that, even if we handle the debt limit crisis we have right now?
Well, I think that this is going to be the dominant debate in Washington for the next 6-8 weeks. I think there are going to be serious negotiations and attempted serious negotiations to slow the rate of spending on health care entitlements, Medicare principally, in a dollar-for-dollar way with increases in the debt. The president says he won't make it a straight trade. He won't describe it as a straight trade-off. He wants to decouple what he says is essentially permission to pay bills that we've incurred long ago with future discussions about trimming entitlements. Whether they can even come to an agreement on whether it should be described as a one-for-one trade or two different actions is one of the reasons for the standoff. But there is going to be a serious, I think, it's unavoidable that there will be another attempt this spring to rein in some of the entitlement spending, the health care spending that is really the driving problem of our deficit, and which they have gotten close to several times in the past.
If there can be an agreement on that, but it sounds like the way you're describing it, and this is the last point that I would love for you to clarify, that even if we handle it right now, we could be back here again at 18 trillion.
Oh, we can be back here often. We can be the law says, in theory, that Congress has to permit borrowing. There's no chance that under any of these scenarios our debt is not going to continue to rise. It'll just rise at a slower level. There was one small period right before September 11th when the debt was actually shrinking on its own because we were in a period of surplus. But no one is talking about a period of surplus yet. We're only talking about slowing the amount of debt that we're piling up, not reversing it and going backwards. So yes, we're going to be back here. I think in the end what you should look for is a deal similar to what we had 2 summers ago, which was that the president will be allowed to raise the debt limit in increments, subject to a vote of approval, in which a vote of disapproval by Congress, in which a supermajority of Congress could say no. They won't say no, and he'll come up.
Yeah, I have to leave it there, David. But on this topic, I'm sure you'll be back with us soon. Thank you very much, David Hawkins.
Thank you. It's complicated stuff.
Not when you describe it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Greg?